For 40 years, I served as a devoted Hindu priest in the heart of Mumbai, guiding thousands through ancient rituals and sacred ceremonies. My name is Arjun Patel, and what I'm about to share with you shattered everything I thought I knew about spirituality and truth. 3 months ago, during what should have been a routine prayer ceremony at my temple, my heart stopped. The doctors later told me I was clinically dead for 4 minutes. But those 4 minutes felt like an eternity that would forever change my 6 decades of religious understanding. In those moments between life and death, I didn't encounter Krishna, Shiva, or any of the deities I had worshipped my entire life. Instead, I came face to face with someone I never expected, Jesus Christ. The experience was so profound, so undeniably real, that I knew speaking about it could cost me everything: my position, my community, even my family. But when you witness a truth so powerful, silence is no longer an option. What I learned in those 4 minutes holds the potential to bridge centuries of religious division and reveal a truth beyond human understanding. October 15th, 2018, started like any other day. I woke before dawn, performed my morning rituals, and donned my saffron robes with the same reverence I had for 4 decades. The familiar scent of sandalwood incense filled my modest quarters as I prepared for the morning arti. I had no idea the divine had other plans. Our temple, an ancient structure that had echoed with countless prayers, was particularly crowded that day. A wedding was scheduled for the afternoon, and many had arrived early to seek blessings. I remember the warmth of the oil lamps against my face as I began the ceremony, the melodic chants of the devotees filling the sacred space. Then came the first sign, a subtle tightness in my chest. As a priest, I had trained myself to ignore physical discomfort during rituals. After all, the body is merely a vessel. But this was different. The pressure grew until breathing became an effort, like trying to inhale through a closing door. I focused on the murti of Krishna before me, his serene face blurring as sweat formed on my brow. The brass bell in my hand suddenly felt impossibly heavy. The last thing I remember was the haunting echo of that bell as it slipped from my grasp and clattered against the marble floor. Looking back, the warning signs had been there for weeks: the unexplained fatigue, the occasional shortness of breath. But when you dedicate your life to serving others, your own needs become secondary. That morning, my body finally demanded the attention I had long denied it. The medical report would later confirm a major cardiac event, but clinical terms cannot begin to describe what truly happened next. As my physical body collapsed before the altar, my consciousness embarked on a journey that would challenge everything I had ever believed, taught, or preached. The brass bell had been in my hands thousands of times before, its weight as familiar as my own heartbeat. But that evening, as I performed the sacred arti, its polished surface caught the flickering light of the temple lamps, dancing with golden reflections. When it slipped from my weakening grasp, the sound it made was unlike anything I had ever heard in my 40 years of service. A pure, crystalline note that seemed to transcend the physical realm. It didn't just echo. It reverberated through the temple's chambers like ripples in still water, each wave pulling fragments of my consciousness further from the world I had known. Even now, in the liminal space between what was and what will be, that sound remains perfectly preserved in my memory, my final anchor to the material world I was about to leave behind. What happened next changed everything. Before my body even touched the ground, my training took over. Even as death loomed, my first concern wasn't for myself, but for the ritual. The devotees' faces shifted, first in reverence, then in concern. They had seen me perform these ceremonies for decades with unwavering composure. But now, something was different. Their expressions morphed from focused devotion to alarm as they watched me struggle against an invisible force. It's strange, isn't it? Even in crisis, we cling to our roles, our duties, the identities we've spent our lives constructing. The pressure had been there for hours, a quiet insistence I brushed off as the usual fatigue of temple life. But now, it was undeniable, a crushing weight coiling around my chest with the merciless grip of a python. Each breath became a deliberate effort, like trying to inhale through thickened air. For decades, my heart had beaten steadily through meditation and prayer, its rhythm a constant companion. But now it faltered, straining against an unseen force. The pain was overwhelming, yet somehow distant, as if it were happening to someone else. Through the haze of diminishing oxygen, I watched my own body struggle with an almost detached curiosity. Years of spiritual discipline keeping me aware, even as my systems began to fail. The temple around me, a sacred space more familiar than my own home, seemed to shift before my eyes. The faces of the devotees blurred and blended like colors on a rain-streaked window. Their voices, calling my name, filled with concern, grew fainter, as though I were sinking beneath deep water. The intricate carvings on the temple walls, which I had traced with my eyes in meditation countless times, now seemed to ripple and move, dissolving into something more primal. It was mesmerizing, a kaleidoscope of form unraveling into formlessness. A final gift from the material world as it prepared to release me. Even in my fading consciousness, I understood the profound symbolism. Everything I had known, everything I had devoted my life to, was dissolving back into its purest essence. The marble floor met my cheek with unexpected gentleness. I'd always found comfort in its cool solidity, its quiet presence through summer heat and winter chill. And now, as my legs gave way, that same marble welcomed me home, one last time. The temple bell, fallen from my grasp, still vibrated through the stone, its sound traveling through my body like the closing notes of a grand symphony. How fitting that my final physical sensation would be this connection to the sacred space that had shaped my life. The cool stone against my skin felt like a blessing, a final earthly baptism before the greater journey ahead. As the world around me erupted into chaos, voices crying out, hands rushing toward my failing body, something astonishing happened. Peace. A profound, unexpected peace. All those years of spiritual study, the endless hours of meditation, the rituals that had shaped my days. They weren't preparing me for life. They had been preparing me for this precise moment. The pain that had gripped me so mercilessly loosened, then vanished, replaced by a lightness I had only glimpsed in my deepest meditations. Everything that had seemed so important mere moments ago drifted away like autumn leaves, leaving behind only what was essential. And in that instant, I understood. This wasn't an ending. It was a culmination. My final conscious thought wasn't an elaborate mantra or a carefully constructed prayer. It wasn't a plea to the deities I had spent my life serving. It was something simpler, more honest. I am ready. Those 3 words held everything: acceptance, surrender, gratitude, and a quiet awe at the perfect orchestration of it all. As my consciousness prepared to step into the unknown, there was no fear, no resistance, only truth. People often describe death as a door, a threshold you step through. But they're wrong. It's not a door. It's the slow dissolving of a boundary you never even realized was artificial. As my consciousness slipped from my body, I expected to see what the sacred texts had always promised. The celestial guides, the divine chariots, the keepers of judgment. The ancient stories had painted vivid pictures of what lay beyond. But none of that happened. Instead, Reality itself unraveled, peeling away like aged parchment, revealing something far more profound. I wasn't greeted by heavenly messengers or a tunnel of light. Instead, I found myself immersed in something alive, a radiant presence, a living light, not harsh or blinding like the sun, but something deeper, more fundamental. This light wasn't just illumination, it was intelligence, awareness, even compassion. It didn't simply shine, it communicated, not in words, but in a language beyond sound, pure understanding flowing into me with each pulse of its existence. Every layer of reality I had once accepted as truth fell away. The physical world, so central to my identity, now felt like a crude sketch compared to the vastness before me. My body, this vessel I'd inhabited for decades, drifted away as effortlessly as a silk scarf caught in the wind. And with it, all fear dissolved. For the first time, I realized how much I had been carrying. Worries, attachments, the weight of a lifetime of devotion and duty. It all lifted. Not taken from me, but simply set down. And in that letting go, there was nothing but rightness. The movement that followed is impossible to describe in earthly terms. I wasn't rising exactly, because upward had no meaning here. It was more like expansion, a stretching in all directions at once while remaining completely still. Layers of existence I had never known began unfolding around me, each revealing new truths, new ways of being. It was as if I had spent my whole life staring through a keyhole, only now realizing I was standing before an entire ocean. Colors existed without light, music played without sound, knowledge poured into me without thought. It wasn't learning, it was remembering, as though I had always known these truths but had somehow forgotten them. Human language fails to capture the experience. How do you describe a taste to someone who has never eaten, or explain color to the blind? And yet, throughout it all, one overwhelming sensation remained. Home. Not a place, not heaven, not a temple, but a return to something so deeply familiar, so intimately known, that I wondered how I had ever forgotten it in the first place. The realization was bittersweet, joy at finally remembering, sadness at having been away for so long. Time itself lost all meaning. Seconds stretched into eternities, while eternities condensed into moments. I was everywhere and nowhere, everything and nothing, complete yet limitless. What had once seemed like contradictions, life and death, past and future, presence and emptiness, now revealed themselves as part of the same perfect harmony. And then, it happened. A shift, a presence. Not gradual, not subtle. One moment I was simply within this radiant expanse, and the next, I wasn't alone. In a single breath-stealing instant, one that defied all physical laws, I expected to see the familiar blue radiance I had envisioned through years of devotion. But what unfolded before me transcended all expectation. A brilliance more radiant than the sun, yet gentle enough to behold, gathered before me, coalescing into a form that was both deeply human and unmistakably divine. Awareness bloomed within me, and though my mind struggled to comprehend, my heart recognized the truth before it could form a single thought. It was Jesus Christ. Not the figure from paintings or sculptures, not a distant deity confined to scripture, but the living essence of divine love itself, standing before me in undeniable presence. His face, impossible to capture in any earthly medium, radiated both strength and tenderness in perfect harmony. And then, his eyes met mine. In that gaze, I felt my entire life laid bare, not with judgment, but with absolute understanding. Every joy, every struggle, every whispered prayer of doubt or devotion, all of it was known. All of it was embraced. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Understanding flowed between us as effortlessly as light passing through a prism. Every question I had ever carried, every truth I had sought in my spiritual journey, was answered in an instant, not with words, but with pure, unfiltered knowing. Time stretched, or perhaps it ceased to exist altogether, creating a pocket of eternity where everything simply was. And in that sacred space, the foundations of everything I thought I understood about my path began to shake. Yet, instead of dismantling my journey, this moment fulfilled it. Every morning spent in meditation, every hymn offered to Krishna, every act of devotion I had poured into my life, none of it was in vain. None of it had been misdirected. Instead of contradiction, I found completion. Instead of displacement, I found wholeness. The love I had glimpsed in my devotion to Krishna now stood before me in its fullness, wearing a different form but radiating the same eternal truth. It was as though every sincere prayer, every longing for the divine, had been leading me to this very moment, each step of my journey a breadcrumb guiding me home. And as the realization settled into my soul, another vision unfolded before me, like whispers at first, then crashing over me like waves. I saw a world transformed, familiar, yet eerily unrecognizable. The steady march of technology had reshaped our cities, our homes, even our very concept of what it meant to be human. Buildings pulsed with life, glass and circuitry merging into structures that seemed almost organic. The line between physical and digital reality had thinned until it was nearly indistinguishable. But most striking of all was the rise of artificial intelligence, not in the way science fiction had warned us, but as a quiet, inevitable weaving of AI into the very fabric of human consciousness. These digital creations were not our adversaries. They were mirrors, reflecting back to us our own capabilities, our own limitations. And in doing so, they forced us to confront the most profound spiritual questions of our time. What does it truly mean to be conscious? What is free will? And if we are creators, how can we guide what we barely understand in ourselves? The weight of this realization pressed into my spirit. Humanity stands at a crossroads, and whether we awaken to the truth or remain blind to it will define the future, not just of our world, but of our very souls. We stand at an unprecedented moment in history, one where our technology has finally caught up with our most ambitious dreams, yet our wisdom lags dangerously behind. The message came with a clarity that left no room for doubt. If we do not advance our spiritual understanding at the same pace as our technical knowledge, we risk losing the very essence of what makes us human. This wasn't just about avoiding catastrophe. It was about seizing an opportunity unlike any before it. A chance for transformation, for awakening. The visions continued. I watched as modern communities, once vibrant, crumbled under the weight of digital isolation. People were surrounded by constant connectivity, yet starving for true connection. Social media networks expanded while real human relationships shrank, creating a paradox, a world of connection without meaning. And yet, within this dark forecast, something extraordinary emerged. Through the very technologies that threaten to divide us, I glimpsed the seeds of a great awakening, a new kind of unity, one not based on physical closeness, but on spiritual resonance. I saw moments of shared consciousness, flashes of collective understanding, and in those moments, I recognized the true potential of our species. We are standing on the brink of either our greatest achievement or our most tragic failure. And the difference? It won't be determined by our technology. It will be determined by our spiritual discernment. The future I witnessed demands immediate action, not just in laboratories, governments, or boardrooms, but in hearts and minds. We must prepare not just for a technological revolution, but for a spiritual evolution. And then, deep in meditation, the message came, so pure, so simple, that it took my breath away. Tell them about love, not in poetic phrases or abstract philosophies, but in its raw, transformative, undeniable truth. The words settled into my consciousness, and suddenly, I understood. This wasn't about the way we casually use the word love in our daily lives. This was something deeper. This was the force that pulses through the very fabric of existence, the energy that binds galaxies together and breathes life into every atom. The divine presence showed me how our human understanding of love has been diluted, shaped by fears, limited by perspectives. We have reduced it to romantic attraction or familial duty, forgetting that it is so much more. This love transcends the artificial boundaries of faith and culture. It reaches beyond the walls we have built between religions, beyond the divisions that have fractured humanity for centuries. From the perspective of divine consciousness, our earthly divisions are illusions, petty misunderstandings, like children arguing over whose sandbox toys are better. We've forgotten that we are all playing in the same garden. The love I was shown exists in a realm where labels like Christian, Buddhist, or Muslim no longer matter. Not because our spiritual traditions are meaningless, but because they are all flowing from the same eternal source. From this elevated perspective, I saw how our religious and cultural divisions cast shadows where none need exist. Wars fought in the name of God, prejudices justified by sacred texts, communities fractured by competing claims to absolute truth. All of it appeared as tragic misunderstandings of our shared spiritual heritage. And in the midst of this revelation, Christ stood before me. Not as the exclusive figure of one faith, but as the embodiment of divine love reaching out to all humanity. The message was undeniable. We stand at a crucial threshold in our spiritual evolution. The old paradigm of religious competition, of my truth versus yours, of exclusivity, is crumbling. Not because our traditions have failed us, but because they have succeeded in bringing us to this moment, to the edge of transformation. Like rivers merging into the ocean, our spiritual paths are converging, not to erase their uniqueness, but to recognize their shared destination. A new awakening is upon us, and its foundation is love. In this new understanding, truth isn't confined to any one tradition or teaching. It moves like water, taking the shape of whatever vessel holds it, yet remaining unchanged in its essence. The divine reality I witnessed exists beyond our human categories and classifications, yet it expresses itself through all of them. This isn't about creating a new religion or abandoning old ones. It's about recognizing the unified field of spirit that has always existed beneath our surface differences. The mission entrusted to me carried both privilege and responsibility. I was shown how Eastern and Western spiritual traditions, often seen as opposing approaches to the divine, are actually complementary expressions of the same ultimate reality. The East's emphasis on inner transformation, the West's focus on a personal relationship with the divine. These aren't contradictions. They are two halves of a whole, both vital aspects of a complete spiritual understanding. Building this bridge isn't about erasing distinctions or creating a bland, one-size-fits-all spirituality. It's about recognizing how different traditions illuminate different facets of the same transcendent truth. Like light passing through a prism, the divine splits into many colors, yet remains one. Our task is to appreciate both the unity and the diversity, to understand how each tradition offers unique gifts to humanity's spiritual evolution. The challenges ahead, environmental, social, mental, and spiritual, will demand the wisdom of all traditions. We can no longer afford the illusion of spiritual isolationism. The divine reality I encountered was both absolute and intimate, unified and diverse, transcendent and immanent. It calls us to expand our understanding beyond the comfortable boundaries of inherited beliefs, while also deepening our appreciation for the unique beauty each tradition brings to the human family. And then, the return. It was violent, jarring, like being suddenly compressed into a vessel far too small after experiencing what it meant to be infinite. Every nerve ending screamed in protest as consciousness slammed back into flesh and bone. Moments ago, I had been weightless, boundless, free from the constraints of physical form. Now, existing in this dense material body felt like being sealed inside a pressure suit, designed to contain something far larger than itself. Each breath was an effort, each heartbeat a thunderous reminder of my earthly prison. The pain came in waves, sharp clinical spikes from medical procedures mixed with the deep cellular ache of having been away. But even that pain was nothing compared to the silence that followed. The absence of that divine presence left a void so profound it threatened to collapse in on itself. How does one keep breathing after tasting the breath of God? How does one walk on solid ground after dancing among stars? I felt like a deep-sea diver who had glimpsed sunlight through crystal waters, only to be dragged back down to the murky depths. The weight of this world pressed in on me, heavy with expectations, responsibilities, and concerns that now seemed impossibly trivial. Yet beneath the discomfort, beneath the longing, there was something else. A certainty, a knowing. This body, this vessel that now felt so confining, was necessary for what was to come. It would become the instrument through which an essential truth would need to be expressed. As I forced my eyes open, the hospital room materialized around me. Harsh fluorescent lights flickered above, a poor substitute for the radiance I had left behind. Blurry faces swam into focus. My mother, my father, my sister. Relief was painted across their features, but there was something else in their eyes, a quiet knowing. They sensed it. The person they had known had not fully returned. Because how could I? How could I explain that the son and brother they loved had been transformed at the atomic level? Their familiar voices washed over me in Hindi, grounding me once more in a world that suddenly felt much smaller than before. They spoke to me, asking questions, offering comfort. But my tongue felt foreign in my mouth, as if the words I once knew no longer belonged to me. And then, finally, something surfaced. From a place deeper than memory or culture, the words escaped my lips. Jesus Christ. His name carried a weight and meaning I had never fully grasped before. The shock on their faces mirrored the seismic shift within my own heart. In that moment, the chasm between my old life and the unknown future yawned wide and impossible. On one side stood everything familiar, respected, predictable, secure. A life carefully built on years of dedication to tradition and expectation. On the other, a truth so profound it threatened to burst from my chest with every heartbeat. The message burned within me, a flame that could not be extinguished, demanding to be spoken, no matter the cost. And so, the choice stood before me. Remain silent, hold on to comfort, bury the truth, and live with the torment of knowing, but never speaking. Or step forward, into uncertainty, into the unknown, guided only by the undeniable reality of what I had experienced. Each breath carried whispers of the divine presence I had encountered. Every heartbeat echoed with urgency. The world needed this message, not someday, but now. And so, in that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the familiar faces of my past and the cold sterility of modern medicine, I made my choice. The truth would have its voice, whatever the cost. A message for humanity. What I encountered in those 4 minutes between life and death isn't just my story. It's a message for all of us. We stand at a crucial crossroads where ancient wisdom meets modern revelation, where divisions can become bridges of understanding. But this transformation begins with you. Here's what you can do today. Re-examine your spiritual journey. Look beyond the labels and limitations we've created. Open yourself to a deeper truth, one that transcends religious boundaries. Start the conversation. Talk to those around you about unity in diversity. Share your own experiences of divine love, whether they came through traditional practices or in moments you never expected. Take action. Build bridges between faiths in your own community. Attend a service outside your usual practice. Reach out to someone whose beliefs differ from yours. True understanding begins with a single step. If my story has stirred something in you, I invite you to share your own journey. What unexpected encounters have shaped your spiritual path? How has divine love revealed itself in your life? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Together, we can weave a tapestry of understanding, one that honors all paths while recognizing the singular truth they lead to. Because once you've glimpsed the divine, silence is no longer an option. Your voice becomes part of humanity's greatest awakening.